There is a particular kind of fury that has no voice. It does not shout. It does not throw things. It sits very still in the back row of a London auction house on a grey Tuesday morning in October, wearing a bonnet that has been repaired 3 times, holding a paddle that represents the last of a month's earnings, and watching a man in the front row raise his hand with the casual authority of someone who has never once counted his coins. She has lost 7 lots to him this year. 7 manuscripts, 7 rare documents, 7 pieces of history that she needed. Needed, not merely wanted, wrenched from her reach by a single lazy gesture from the Duke of Ashmoor. She does not know his face. She knows only the back of his dark head, the width of his shoulders beneath an impeccable coat, and the particular brand of madness he inspires in her chest every single time that paddle rises. Today he turns around, and that is when everything begins. Her name is Eleanor Ashford. She is 24 years old. She speaks 5 languages, can authenticate a 12th-century manuscript by the smell of its vellum, and has kept her family from the Fleet prison for 3 consecutive years, through sheer intellectual labor, conducted entirely under her father's name, because no reputable collector in England will commission a woman directly. His name is Sebastian Vale, Duke of Ashmoor. He is 32 years old. He has spent 10 years mastering the art of revealing nothing, and the last 6 weeks being unable to stop watching her. They have been at war since the first auction. They simply did not know it was also something else. Now, before we go a single word further, I need to stop and say this directly to you. Thank you so much for being here. It really means the world to me. It is essential that we get your support through subscriptions, likes, and comments. So if this story is already pulling at your heart, please hit that subscribe button for us, smash that like button, and drop a comment telling us where you are watching from. Every single comment, every single subscriber, you are the reason these stories get told. You are the reason Eleanor gets to speak. Now, let us get back to the story. Subscribe to see how this unfolds, and comment where you are watching from. I will love to say hello to you, just to know how far our story is going. Chapter 1. Eleanor, the auction, the Sotheby's auction rooms, smell of old paper, cold ambition, and the quiet desperation of people pretending they are not desperate. I arrive at 9 o'clock precisely, as I always do, because the chairs at the front fill first, and I cannot afford a chair at the front. I take my position at the back, near the wall, where the draught from the ill-fitted window keeps the air sharp and honest. I do not mind the cold. Cold is clarifying. The room is perhaps 40 people deep this morning. Most are collectors or their agents, men of varying degrees of importance in coats of varying degrees of quality. There are 2 other women present. One is a duchess who attended purely to be seen attending, and the other is a woman I suspect is also an agent in disguise because her eyes move the way mine do, cataloguing, calculating, never quite at rest. I give her a small, invisible nod of professional respect. She gives me one back. The lot I have come for is lot 14, a 12th-century illuminated psalter in near remarkable condition, its marginalia annotated in a hand, consistent with the Cistercian scriptoria of northern France, my client. A quiet Cambridge scholar named Dr. Terence Hobbs, who commissions work through my father's name and has never questioned why Sir Edmund Ashford never actually appears, has authorized me to bid to £140. I have 80 shillings and 3 pennies beyond that in my reticule, which I intend not to spend, and a letter from my bank that confirms a credit line I would rather not touch. I know the psalter. I authenticated it 2 weeks ago when it came to Christie's for preliminary evaluation, and I did so under the name Ashford, as I always do, with the thoroughness I always bring, and was paid for my time in a banker's draft, made out to a man who was, at that precise moment, losing the equivalent amount at a card table in Mayfair. My father is many things. A skilled economist is not among them. The auctioneer takes his position. I straighten. I have done this 47 times in 3 years. Attended auctions, represented clients, acquired manuscripts and documents that other people want, without knowing precisely why they want them, beyond the vague cultural prestige of ownership. I am very good at this work. I am, in the opinion I hold privately and share with no one, among the 3 most accomplished manuscript authenticators in England. None of the collectors who hire me know this. They know a quiet, well-spoken man named Ashford who produces thorough reports. They do not know that Ashford is a 24-year-old woman in a repaired bonnet, standing at the back of the room with Latin conjugations running silently through her head as a method of managing nerves. The early lots are brisk. A collection of estate letters goes for £32. A Flemish devotional text is pushed to 120 before an elderly man near the front runs out of will to compete. I watch the room the way I always do, not the auctioneer, but the bidders. You learn more about the value of a thing by watching the people who want it than by reading any catalogue description. Lot 14 is announced. I raise my paddle. The room stirs as it always does when there is something genuinely worth having. 4 other paddles rise within seconds. I settle into the rhythm of it, the small incremental ascent, the moment when the casual bidders lose interest, the narrowing of the field to the serious contenders. By £80, there are 2 of us left. By 100, only 1. Me and paddle number 7. Paddle number 7 is at the front of the room. It has been at the front of the room for 6 of the 7 auctions I have attended this year. I know it by the angle of its rise, unhurried, entirely without urgency, the kind of raise that says I am not trying. Which means the person raising it is trying very much, but has spent considerable effort learning not to show it. 110. 120. I am at my limit. I am, technically, past my comfort. The credit line sits in my reticule like a hot coal. 130. 135. And then paddle number 7 turns. The man attached to it turns. I do not know what I expected. Some wizened collector, perhaps. Someone ancient and acquisitive. What I see instead is a man of perhaps 30, dark-haired, with a face of the particular severity that suggests it was carved rather than grown, all sharp angles and careful arrangement. His eyes find mine across 40 people and a great deal of expensive air. They are very dark. They are also, unmistakably, intelligent. He looks at me the way one regards an invoice, necessary, inconvenient, and already mentally filed. I look back at him the way one regards a man who has been stealing one's livelihood for 12 months. With perfect composure and absolute fury. 140, his paddle rises. 145. I raise mine, my hand does not tremble. I am very proud of this fact. 150. 155. I am spending money I do not have. I am spending it because the Psalter is genuine, because Dr. Hobbes deserves to have it, and because the man with the dark eyes and the lazy paddle does not need another manuscript. Whatever he intends with 7 rare documents in 12 months, it is not scholarship. I am quite certain of this. 160. His paddle rises for the final time. The auctioneer looks at me. I look at the ceiling. I look at the ceilings, because if I look at the man in the front row, I will either bid £170 I cannot afford, or say something that would cause a scene, and I do not cause scenes in professional settings. Sold at £160, to the Duke of Ashmoor. I lower my paddle. I walk out. The cold London morning receives me without sympathy. October in 1814 smells of horse and coal smoke, and the particular damp that seeps into everything and makes the bones ache. I stand on the pavement for a moment and count what I have. Enough for this week. Not enough for next week if Dr. Hobbs does not have another commission soon. Not enough, certainly, for the growing sum that my father's creditors have begun sending letters about. Always letters. Never visits, yet. But the letters have a new quality to them lately, a precision, a specificity, that suggests someone has taken over the management of Sir Edmund Ashford's debts with considerably more organization than Sir Edmund has ever applied to anything. I go home. The letter is on the hall table. I recognize the quality of the paper immediately. This is not the standard stationer's weight of a debt collection firm. This is the paper of someone who does not need to announce their importance, because their importance is already universally understood. I open it. Miss Ashford, the debt of Sir Edmund Ashford, Baronet, in the aggregate sum of £4,217, has been acquired from its previous holders, and is now held by the Duke of Ashmoor. The Duke requests the honour of a brief meeting at your earliest convenience. Ashmoor House, Grosvenor Square. 12th October, 1814. 2 sentences, no further explanation, no statement of intent. I read the letter 8 times. I count the windows in the wall across the street. I go back inside and make tea, which I let go cold while I stand at the kitchen window thinking about a man with dark eyes and a lazy paddle and 12 months of manuscripts that do not belong to him. Then I sit down at my writing desk and begin listing my options. There are 4. 3 of them end in the Fleet Prison. I pick up the letter again. My hands are perfectly steady. My mind has already begun calculating the escape routes, because there is always an escape route, and finding it is simply a matter of looking at the problem from the correct angle. I fold the letter. I place it precisely in the center of the desk. Then I go to see what the Duke of Ashmoor actually wants. Chapter 2. Sebastian. The asset I did not want the Psalter. This is the part of the morning that would require explanation, if anyone ever asked, which no one will, because I have spent a great deal of effort ensuring that no one is comfortable enough in my presence to ask personal questions. The Psalter went for £160, a fair price for an excellent piece and considerably less than it was worth. And I bid on it not because I needed it, but because I needed her to know I existed. This requires further explanation. 6 months ago, a Foreign Office contact by the name of Geoffrey Renwick, a small, nervous man with an extraordinary memory and a talent for surviving situations that would kill a less cautious person, came to me with a problem. He sat in my study at Ashmoor House, wrapped his hands around a cup of tea he never drank, and told me that someone had been using legitimate manuscript acquisitions as a courier system. The mechanism was elegant, which is perhaps why it had gone undetected for 18 months. A forged diplomatic document, not a crude forgery, but a sophisticated one, prepared by someone who understood period papers, period inks, and period hands, would be embedded within an older, legitimate manuscript. The manuscript would pass through auction, change hands, and at some point in its journey, the forgery would be extracted by the buyer and put to use. The use, Renwick told me, was the destabilization of post-war diplomatic arrangements. False intelligence fed to both sides of the Congress of Vienna negotiations, creating manufactured crises in territories that were still raw from 20 years of war. Renwick also told me that one of his contacts, a quiet art dealer named Arthur Poole, who had been feeding him information about the auction house movements, had gone missing 3 weeks prior. He did not say dead. He said missing. The distinction, I understood, was professional courtesy. I agreed to help. I have a particular skill set that the Foreign Office finds useful, and that does not appear in any formal employment record. I spent 4 years. During the war decoding intercepted correspondence. I speak 7 languages, and I am sufficiently powerful socially that no one questions my presence at auction houses, at estate sales, at the kind of gatherings where rare documents change hands, and no one looks too closely at the provenance. The trail, when I began following it, led in interesting directions, and one of those directions was a woman. She appeared first as a name in Renwick's papers, Miss E. Ashford, manuscript authenticator, working under the name of her father, Sir Edmund. She had authenticated 3 of the lots I was tracing. She had authenticated them accurately, as far as I could determine. She identified the genuine manuscripts as genuine. What she had not identified was the forgeries concealed within them, which was either extraordinary negligence or extraordinary innocence. I spent 2 months deciding which. I have decided it is innocence. The certainty settled approximately 6 weeks ago, and settled, I confess, in a way that went somewhat beyond professional assessment. She bid against me at Sotheby's on a Carolingian fragment. She ultimately lost by £30. She did not flinch. She did not look at me. She stood in the back of the room and raised her paddle with the composure of someone who has simply decided to win and has not quite updated her information about the situation. She lost. She walked out. She did not look back. I thought about this for 3 days. Then I thought about the file. The file my man Grimshaw had compiled. Movements, clients, finances, a portrait of a brilliant woman doing exceptional work in secret, funding a family that was systematically dismantling itself, paddling against the current with absolute determination and absolutely no assistance. The note I had written in the margin of the first page of the file. 7 weeks ago. Read. Monitor professional movements and client contacts. The note I had written 6 weeks ago after the Carolingian auction. Read something less easily categorized. I crossed it out. I rewrote it. The version I settled on was observe ongoing. This is not, I am aware, standard intelligence notation. What concerns me this morning, this particular Tuesday morning, having one absolter I do not need from a woman who needed it very much, is the news Grimshaw brought me 40 minutes ago. The Marquess of Vane has made an approach to Sir Edmund Ashford, not regarding the debt. I acquired that 3 weeks ago specifically to keep Vane away from it, because Vane has been circling the Ashford financial situation for months, and I know why. He knows that Eleanor Ashford is the most capable manuscript authenticator in London. He knows she has already, without realizing it, gotten within arm's reach of his operation, and he needs her either silenced or controlled. What Vane does not know is that I have been watching his operation for 6 months, or that I have been watching her for 6 weeks, with an attention that has moved, gradually and against my professional judgment, well beyond the requirements of the case. I sit at the desk in my study and write her a letter. I write 4 drafts. The 4th is 2 sentences. I send the 4th. Then I sit very still for a moment, which is not something I do often. Grimshaw appears at the door. He is a former army intelligence man, solid, perceptive, and possessed of the excellent quality of pretending not to notice things that are not his business. "Your Grace," he says, "Lord Vane's man has been seen at Sir Edmund's club." I file this information where it belongs, in the part of my mind that handles threats, and I set aside the crossed-out drafts of the letter. She will come, or she will not. If she comes, I can explain the situation, or as much of it as is advisable at this stage. If she does not come, if she is too stubborn, too frightened, or too justifiably furious to walk into the house of the man who holds her father's debt, she will come. I know this with the same certainty. I know the psalter was genuine. She is not the kind of woman who stays put while a problem requires solving. Chapter 3. Eleanor, the summons. I tell myself I am going because I have no choice. This is not entirely dishonest. A man who holds £4,000 of debt and can have my father sent to prison with a single signature occupies a narrow and uncomfortable category, not a villain, necessarily, but certainly not someone to be ignored. The letter is a summons dressed as a request, and we both know it. I tell myself this all the way to Grosvenor Square. Ashmoor House is exactly what a ducal townhouse is required to be: large, assured, and entirely without apology. The stone is clean, the ironwork is correct, the knocker is brass, heavy, shaped like a lion that looks as though it has never been touched by anyone who did not deserve to touch it. I touch it firmly. The butler who admits me is impeccable in a way that suggests he has always been impeccable and will continue to be so, regardless of whatever else occurs in the world. He takes my card. He does not look at the fraying thread at my glove's left wrist. I note that he does not look at it, which is its own kind of kindness. I am shown to a library. I count 11 minutes. In 11 minutes, I take a complete inventory of the room. 243 volumes, arranged by acquisition date rather than subject, which strikes me as the choice of someone who thinks of books as events rather than knowledge. A desk that is genuinely 17th century and not a reproduction. A portrait of a woman who shares the current Duke's bone structure and expression, suggesting both a hereditary, and a manuscript in a glass case on the second shelf from the left that I recognize, with a lurch of professional interest I cannot suppress, as a probable forgery. The binding is correct. The vellum is correct. The ink, visible through the glass, is almost correct. Almost. The angle of the text block relative to the binding is 3 degrees off what it should be. A genuine 12th-century scriptorium would have produced a tighter marriage of text and cover. This is a sophisticated reproduction. 17th century, at the earliest, probably commissioned specifically to resemble something older. I am reading the spine for a second time when he enters. "Good morning, Miss Ashford," he says. "That manuscript is a forgery," I say. There is a pause. I turn around. He is looking at me with an expression that could be described as several things, none of which are what I expected. I expected the condescension of a powerful man who has summoned a dependent woman and is waiting to deliver his terms. I did not expect what is actually there. Sharp attention, something very close to surprise, and something underneath both that I do not immediately have a name for. "I beg your pardon," he says. "The manuscript in the case," I say. 12th century, Flemish origin, presented as a Psalter commentary. The binding is wrong. Someone has tried very hard to reproduce the stitching pattern, but the text block sits 3 degrees out of true, which would not have occurred in a genuine scriptorium of that period. It is a very good forgery. It is still a forgery. I pause. "Good morning." He looks at the case. He looks at me. Something shifts in his expression. The surprise sharpens into something more intent. "Miss Ashford," he says, "please sit down. I would rather stand, Your Grace. I imagine you would." He moves to the chair on his side of the desk, which I note with interest is positioned lower than I would expect for a man who clearly understands the social mechanics of furniture. He sits. We are approximately level. "The manuscript has been in the case for 8 months. You identified it in under 4 minutes. 3.5. I was giving it the benefit of the doubt for the first 30 seconds. The corner of his mouth moves. I am not certain at first whether it is a smile or something else. I have a proposal for you, he says. I have several conditions, I say. I have not yet made the proposal. No, but I have read your letter, and I have some understanding of what you are likely to propose, and it will go considerably better for both of us if I state my conditions before you state your terms. He is quiet for a moment. Then, by all means, he says, here is what I know. This man holds my father's debt. He could use it as a hammer. He has chosen, instead, to send a polite letter requesting a meeting. This is either restraint or strategy, and either way it suggests that what he wants from me is something he cannot obtain through simple coercion. A man can send a debtor to prison. He cannot compel an authenticator to work, or work honestly, by threat alone. So he needs me willing, which means I have more leverage than the situation superficially suggests. My conditions are as follows, I say. First, whatever arrangement we reach will be conducted professionally, with appropriate written terms. Second, the debt is suspended, not forgiven. I understand a suspension is more credible, and I will not insult either of us by pretending otherwise. Third, I work under my own name for this commission, not my father's. I say the last one quickly, as if it does not matter, because if I slow down, I will lose my nerve. He is very still. That is a significant third condition, he says. I am aware of that. It is also, he says, a reasonable one. I look at him. He looks at me. My proposal, he says, is this. I have recently acquired a collection of manuscripts, some of which I believe to be forgeries. Not harmless ones. I require a professional authenticator to examine them, and I require someone who is sufficiently skilled to detect the specific type of concealment I suspect is present. He pauses. You identified a forgery in my library in 3.5 minutes. I have been attempting to identify that same forgery for 8 months. What kind of concealment are you looking for? I will tell you more as we proceed. The first condition of my arrangement is that you agree to proceed before I tell you everything. This should alarm me. A professional agrees to nothing without full information. And yet, there is something about the way he says, I will tell you more as we proceed, that is not evasion. It is caution, the caution of a man who has learned not to give away more than is absolutely necessary in a first meeting, and who is applying that discipline even to a situation that is, I suspect, costing him some effort. I will agree to a first examination, I say, after which I will decide whether to proceed. Acceptable when? Tomorrow, if you are available. I am available. I am always available. I am available because my professional life consists entirely of commissions I must find, and no one will give me directly. Good day, Your Grace. I move toward the door. Miss Ashford. I stop. You will find, he says, that the third condition has already been arranged. I turn to look at him. He is watching me with that same unreadable attention. I see. Tomorrow, he says. I walk out. I am in the street for 3 minutes before I realize I have agreed to come back. I had not, I notice, made any formal decision to do so. I had simply found myself saying, I am available, as though the decision had been made before the conversation began. I put this aside because there are 27 urgent things to think about, and I will think about this one last. But I do think about it. The whole way home, I think about it. Chapter 4. Sebastian, the Complication. I sat across from a woman who identified a forgery in my library in 3.5 minutes, and I did not move for approximately 45 seconds after she left the room. This is not my usual response to professional encounters. I have negotiated with foreign ministers, decoded intelligence correspondence in 4 languages simultaneously, and managed the affairs of 3 estates, and a parliamentary seat without losing equanimity. I am known for equanimity. Grimshaw has described my equanimity as slightly alarming. My solicitor has described it as professionally convenient. My mother described it, before she died, as exhausting. None of this changes the fact that I sat in my library for 45 seconds after Eleanor Ashford walked out of it and did absolutely nothing which is unprecedented. She negotiated with me. Not pleaded, not acquiesced, negotiated. 3 conditions, stated in order of ascending audacity, the third delivered with a deliberate velocity designed to push it past before I could object. She wanted to work under her own name. She stated it as though it were a small thing, and looked at the wall while she said it, which told me it was the largest thing she had asked for in years. I noted the fraying thread at her left glove. I noted the condition of her bonnet. I noted the calculation in her eyes when she was working out what leverage she actually had, and the moment she decided, she had more than she initially thought. I also noted that she did not look at the manuscripts again after identifying the forgery. She had filed the information and moved on. She did not need to look again because she was already certain, and certainty is, in my experience, one of the rarest things in the world. Grimshaw appears with the afternoon correspondence and stops in the doorway. The third condition, he says, the name arrangement. I know, she wants to work under her own name. I am aware of what the third condition was. Grimshaw. I was present. He sets the correspondence on the desk. He does not leave. The arrangement you ask me to begin, he says carefully, with the antiquarian letters. The acknowledgement from the scholarly community. Yes, I started that process 2 months ago, at your instruction. Also yes, before you had met her. I pick up the first letter in the correspondence stack. I had read her authentication reports. The quality was evident. Grimshaw is quiet for a moment that contains several things he has chosen not to say. There is also the matter of Lord Vane, he says finally. I put the letter down. His man was at Ashford's club this morning. This afternoon, Vane himself sent Sir Edmund a formal letter. Grimshaw produces it. Not the original, a transcription, which means he has contacts inside Sir Edmund's household staff, which I am not going to examine too closely right now. It is a formal offer of marriage. For Miss Ashford, the room acquires a particular quality of silence. Vane wants to marry her. He wants to control her, Grimshaw says. He's not interested in Miss Ashford as a person. He's interested in the fact that she is the only person in London who can authenticate the specific class of Ottoman manuscript he's been using as courier material. She's already authenticated pieces that contained his forgeries without knowing they were forgeries. Her name attached to those documents gives the forgeries legal credibility. He pauses. If she becomes his wife, he controls what she authenticates and what she doesn't. He controls what she knows, and if she ever gets too close to the truth, she's already discredited by association with his family. I stand up. Sir Edmund has not refused. Sir Edmund asked for a week to consider. I cross the room to the window. Grosvenor Square in October is grey and particular, the trees stripped, the sky pressed flat against the rooftops. Somewhere beyond it, Eleanor Ashford is walking home from this house, counting her options, believing the worst threat she faces is her father's debt. She does not know about Vane. She does not know that her professional expertise is the precise instrument Vane needs, or that she has been, without her knowledge, authenticating documents that form the scaffolding of a conspiracy with casualties she has not yet counted. Poole, the dead art dealer, is one of them. There will be more if Vane is not stopped. Send a second letter, I say. Yes, Your Grace. Make it. I stop. Make it brief. Just confirm the appointment tomorrow. Brief is appropriate. Brief is best. Grimshaw takes himself off. I stand at the window for a moment longer. She threw the conditions at me like she expected me to refuse them, and was bracing for the refusal while she made them anyway. That is the posture of someone who has been refused for so long they have stopped, expecting otherwise. I did not refuse. I find that I have no intention of refusing. This is, operationally speaking, a complication. She is a person of interest in an active intelligence matter. The appropriate distance is clear. The appropriate distance is also, I discover, completely beyond my current capacity. Grimshaw, I call. He appears at the door with the readiness of someone who had not gone far. She kept the second letter, he says. I beg your pardon? You asked me to find out. He clears his throat. The first letter she apparently threw onto the fire. The second she kept. I turn back to the window. Thank you, Grimshaw. He goes. I remain. She kept the letter. Chapter 5, Eleanor the Work. The library at Ashmoor House is better in daylight. I arrive at 10 o'clock, am shown directly to the room, and have already removed my gloves, my bonnet, and 2 of the manuscripts from the shelves before he appears in the doorway. He stands there for a count of perhaps 15 seconds, long enough to be noticeable, before he says good morning. You were watching, I say. I was evaluating, he says, from the doorway. I find doorways useful for evaluation. I look at him briefly. He is less severe in daylight than he was at the auction house. This might be because he is in his own home, where the careful arrangement of his expression is slightly less necessary. Or it might be that I am looking more carefully now and seeing what was there all along. The arrangement of this collection, I say, is going to make my work more difficult. You have ordered by acquisition date. I need provenance groupings. Then rearrange it. This is not what I expected him to say. You will let me reorganize your library. If it aids the work, yes. I look at him for a second. It will take most of this morning. Then take most of this morning. I turn back to the shelves. The work itself is the kind of thing that restores my sense of proportion when everything else is disordered. I know manuscript authentication the way some people know music. It lives in my hands and my eyes, and in a part of my mind that operates slightly, apart from the rest, quiet and precise, untroubled by whatever is happening in the surrounding world. I begin with the obvious collection, a group of 8 manuscripts acquired together from an estate sale in September. Estate sale acquisitions are the most common route for forgeries, because provenance is frequently incomplete, and the pace of sale does not allow for careful examination. I check paper weight, ink composition by smell and texture, binding technique, the character of the script. 6 are genuine, 2 are not. One of the 2 is obvious once you know what to look for. A 17th-century reproduction of a 12th-century text, the same type as the forgery I identified yesterday, produced with evident skill and evident haste. The other one is not obvious. The other one is extraordinary. It is genuine, genuinely old, genuinely of its period, a 14th-century text in reasonable condition. But when I hold it at the angle I habitually use for close examination, tilting toward the candlelight at 10 degrees, I see something. Beneath the visible text, in an ink that has faded almost beyond detection, is another text. Not a palimpsest, not a page scraped and reused, which is common. This is a superimposition, a second hand, writing over an existing page, with an ink chemically designed to become nearly invisible. Under ordinary light conditions, someone has hidden something inside this manuscript. I stand very still. I do not tell him. I am not ready to tell him. I do not know enough yet. I do not know enough about what this is, or what it means, or whether the Duke who bought it is the perpetrator or the investigator. And until I know that, I will keep what I have seen inside my own head, where it is safe. I photograph it in my memory. I am very good at memory. I have read every book in my father's library twice, 400 volumes, including the 3 I translated from Latin myself at the age of 19. During the year, my father lost the first estate, and I could not afford new books to read. I remember what I have read precisely. I remember what I have seen. I close the manuscript. I replace it on the shelf I have designated for, requires further examination, which contains 4 items, and now quietly 5. He has been working at the desk for the past 2 hours. Correspondence, documents, a map of something I have not looked at closely enough to identify. We have been sharing the room without speaking for most of the morning, which should be uncomfortable, and is, I find, not uncomfortable at all. At 11 o'clock, he looks up. That fragment, he says, indicating the manuscript I have just shelved. The Carolingian. What period? It is not Carolingian, I say. The text presents as Carolingian, but the scribal hand is post-reform. The letter forms suggest a student who had been trained in the Carolingian style but was working a generation after its peak. Late 9th century, probably rather than 8th. I had it dated to the 8th. Whoever dated it was working from the overall appearance rather than the letter forms. The capital G has a hook that does not appear in genuine 8th century Carolingian work. It is a very minor distinction. I pause. The manuscript is still valuable. It simply belongs to a slightly different category than advertised. He is looking at me with that particular attention again. What kind of education produces that? He asks. The kind where you teach yourself, I say, because no one is going to teach you. There is a pause. I have Thucydides, he says, on the 3rd shelf. Would you like it? While I finish this correspondence, I look at the shelf, I find the volume, I open it. His annotations are in ancient Greek, which I was not expecting, and they are very good. Not a scholar's annotations exactly, but the notes of someone who has been reading Thucydides, not for academic purposes, but for practical ones, translating its observations about intelligence and conflict into something applicable to the present day. Your Greek is accurate, I say. I had the same kind of education. I look at him. He is already back to his correspondence. I sit in the chair beside the window with Thucydides in my lap and the hidden manuscript text running silently through my memory, and I watch him work, and I think about what I know, and what I do not know, and what I am going to have to decide. That evening, at home, I reconstruct from memory every word of the hidden text. I begin to understand that whatever is written in it is not simply unusual. It is dangerous. Chapter 6. Sebastian the Rat in the Wall. Grimshaw arrives on Thursday, with a face that he controls entirely too well for the news to be ordinary. Poole, he says, the art dealer. Renwick's contact, missing for 3 months, yes? Found Thames 2 miles east of Blackfriars. 3 days in the water, at least. He sets a report on the desk. Not drowning. Someone made certain it would not look like drowning, and did not quite succeed. I put down the letter I was reading. Vane is closing the network, I say. It appears so. This is what it looks like when an operation moves toward its end stage. Loose ends, consolidated, removed. Poole knew too much about the manuscript courier system. Someone decided the risk outweighed the usefulness. Someone made a decision with the cold arithmetic of a person who has been doing this long enough to find it unremarkable. Vane has been doing this for 3 years. I pull the file I have been building for 18 months. Intelligence work requires complete information before action, and I have spent 18 months building toward a picture clear enough to act on. What I now have, spread across this desk, is that picture. Vane orchestrated the entire scheme. The forgeries are not random diplomatic mischief. They are targeted instruments in a specific legal strategy. A land title dispute, 3 countries, running through courts in England, France, and the Ottoman territories. The disputed land is worth approximately £4 million, and it represents the cornerstone of 3 separate family inheritances. Vane has been manufacturing evidence on both sides of the dispute, positioning himself to acquire the territories at a fraction of their value when both claimants are discredited. Eleanor Ashford's authentication, applied to the forged documents, was to be the legal cornerstone of the case. Her reputation, the reputation of Ashford, the respected authenticator, the name collectors trust, would have made the forgeries unassailable in court. She authenticated 3 of them without knowing what she was authenticating. She authenticated them because her client sent them, and her client was one of Vane's intermediaries. And the intermediary presented them as legitimate pieces, requiring routine assessment. She is not complicit. She is, however, in danger. If Vane's operation moves to its end stage, if he no longer needs her authentication and begins closing loose ends. Eleanor Ashford is a loose end. She has handled the documents. She knows the manuscripts. She has the intelligence and the knowledge to reconstruct. If she ever looks at the right things in the right order, exactly what was done and how, I pull a second report from the file. Grimshaw produced it 2 days ago. Someone entered Eleanor Ashford's lodgings while she was at Ashmoor House. Nothing was taken. This is a particular kind of message, and I have sent enough of them in my career to read it clearly. We know where you are. We can reach you. Consider your choices. She does not know the message was sent. She does not know about Vane, about Poole, about the £4 million, about the 3 years of systematic forgery that her professional name has been used to underpin. She is walking through her life in a repaired bonnet, believing her biggest problem is my acquisition of her father's debt, while a man is deciding whether she is still useful or whether she has become inconvenient. I stand up from the desk. I do not send Grimshaw with a note. I send a carriage to her lodgings with a message that says, "Please come at your earliest convenience," and is signed with my name. Then I wait. Chapter 7. Eleanor the Break-In. They were very careful. This is the first thing I notice when I come home that afternoon. The care. A burglar is untidy. A curious person looking for valuables leaves traces of search. Pulled drawers, shifted books, disrupted surfaces. What greets me is something different. A precision. Things that have been moved and replaced, but not quite accurately. The way a word almost correctly spelled still reads wrong to the eye that knows it. My writing desk. The correspondence moved 1 inch to the left. The pen stand rotated slightly, the ink bottle facing the wrong direction. My spare authentication tools. The lens case closed when I leave it open, always because the clasp sticks. My manuscript notes, the notes I made during the past 2 days of work at Ashmoor House, gone. I stand in the center of the room for a very long time, then I see the card. It is on the writing desk, placed with deliberate precision, aligned exactly with the edge of the surface. No name, no address. A small symbol, engraved rather than printed. A circle with a mark inside that I recognize with a cold sliding certainty in my stomach. I have seen that mark before. It was on the hidden layer of the manuscript. Not the full text. I did not complete my reconstruction last night, had gone to bed before I finished. But the opening, the identifying mark of origin. I had memorized it and then set it aside, meaning to return to it. The same mark. Here, on this card, on my desk. Someone has been in my rooms and they have left me a message, and the message is, "We know what you found." which means they know I was at Ashmoor House, and they know I examined the manuscripts, and they know I am good enough at my work to have found what was hidden. I sit down, I think, and then I stand back up, put on my coat, and go out into the rain. Ashmoor House at 10 o'clock at night looks different from Ashmoor House in daylight. The windows are mostly dark. The street lamp has a wet, wavering quality in the October rain. I have not sent a card ahead because I do not know who reads cards before they arrive, and because there are moments when the proper social form is simply not the right tool for the situation. I knock. After a moment, the door opens. He opens it himself, which surprises me. No butler, no footman. He is in his shirt sleeves, no coat, no cravat, and his expression moves through several things very quickly when he sees me. Surprise, assessment, something that might be relief, and then the controlled neutrality that seems to be his preferred state. I hold up the card. He looks at it. He looks at my face. He steps back. The library at night is a different room, smaller, warmer, the fire down to a red pulse, 2 candles on the desk. He does not light more. He pours me brandy I do not ask for, and I drink it, because the walk in the rain has taken something out of me, and I am not going to show how much. Tell me, I say. Tell me what you have not told me. He is quiet for a moment, then he talks. He talks about the Foreign Office, about Renwick, about 3 years of forged diplomatic documents, and a dead man in the Thames, and £4 million, and a land dispute that runs across 3 countries. He talks about the manuscripts, about the courier system, about what was being concealed inside them. He does not tell me everything, but he tells me enough, and then I tell him about the hidden text. We are on the floor by 11 o'clock, manuscripts spread across the library carpet, 2 candles burning low. I reconstruct from memory what I have read. Not all of it, the opening section, the identifying marks, enough to confirm what we are both beginning to understand. The hidden text is a confession. We talk until the candles burn. We talk through the analysis, through the implications, through what it means for the case, and what it means for the danger I am apparently in, and at some point, I could not say when, the professional conference becomes something else, something with no clean name, conducted on a library floor in the small hours of the morning. At some point I stop being cold. I do not know when that happens either. When I wake in the chair, my neck stiff and the fire down to embers, there is a coat across my shoulders. I look across the room. He is in the chair opposite, awake, watching the fire. He looks at me when he hears me stir. Something in his expression, the thing he usually manages very carefully, has relaxed, while he was not attending to it. He looks, briefly and completely, like a man in serious trouble. Your lodgings are not safe, he says. I know, I say. You cannot go back tonight. I know that too. He looks at the fire. The east guest room is made up. The lock is solid. How many locks does a guest room require? For most guests, none. For you, possibly 2. I consider this. You are asking me to stay. I am informing you of available accommodation, he says carefully. I look at the coat that was placed over me while I slept. Then I will take the east guest room, I say. He nods. I go upstairs. I do not, for quite some time, sleep. And neither, I suspect, will you, because you have just watched Eleanor Ashford, alone in the dark, in a house that is not quite safe, walk back into the storm instead of away from it. And you already know that what waits at the bottom of those stairs is not just a duke with a debt and a secret. It is something neither of them has a name for yet. If this story has its hands around your heart right now, if you are already asking what does he actually want from her, and what does she actually want from him, then I need you to do one thing before we go any further. Hit that subscribe button right now. Because Chapter 8 is where the walls of Ashmoor House close in around both of them, and you do not want to. Be the person who finds this channel after it is over. Wishing you had been here from the beginning. Smash that like button if Eleanor just earned your full respect. And drop a comment telling us where you are watching from tonight. I genuinely want to know how far this story is traveling. We will be right back. Eleanor is not finished yet. Chapter 8. Sebastian forced proximity. She has reorganized the downstairs library. I discover this at 7 o'clock in the morning when I come down to find it entirely different. Not disordered, precisely reorganized by subject, by century, by linguistic origin, with the manuscripts integrated into the overall arrangement rather than kept separate as I had them. It is an extremely good system. It is better than my system. I take approximately 45 seconds to acknowledge this, and then proceed with my morning. She cannot return to her lodgings. She argues this position vigorously when I present it after breakfast. Vigorously, precisely, and with reference to 3 specific precedents from English property law that she has apparently memorized, which is exactly the kind of thing she would do. I let her make the full argument. I let her make it, because watching her think at full speed is... I have discovered over the past 2 weeks one of the more remarkable things I have encountered in 32 years, and I have encountered some remarkable things. Then I show her the file. The full intelligence file this time. Pool, the Thames, the timeline, the projection of Vane's likely next movements. She reads it in silence. She reads it entirely, which takes 14 minutes, and then she sets it down and is quiet for a moment, and then says, "The East Guest Room." If it is agreeable. It is not agreeable, she says, but it is correct. She is moved to the East Guest Room. She also, within 24 hours, begins converting the study at the end of the hall into a working space. I come home from a meeting with Grimshaw to find a lamp has been moved. 3 reference texts have appeared on the secondary desk, and the angle of the chair has been adjusted with some intention toward the window light. The east light is better for manuscript work, she says, when I observe this. Yes, I say. I do not ask her not to rearrange the study. I find, somewhat to my surprise, that I do not want to. The domestic situation is, operationally speaking, an extremely bad idea. 2 people in close quarters, one of whom I am supposed to be managing at professional distance, as the person of interest in an active intelligence matter, with access to my library, my household, and the part of my morning when I will be plain about this. Least certain of my professional distance. She makes tea using the wrong pot, which produces a much better cup of tea than the correct pot produces, and I drink it without mentioning this, because she would find it amusing, and I am not prepared, on the 3rd day, to provide her with additional evidence that I find her amusing. I find the Thucydides she returned to the shelf. Her annotations are in pencil, barely visible, added in the margins of mine. They are not corrections, they are responses, where I have noted the application of a strategic observation to intelligence work. She has noted the application of the same observation to authentication. The intersections are, in several places, surprisingly precise. I sit with the volume for some time. On the 4th day, we are working on the hidden text together. She is at the desk. I am at the table. We have been attempting to reconstruct the full cipher of the hidden layer. She has the language knowledge. I have the code structure, and between the 2 of us, we are making progress that neither could make alone, which is itself something I need to stop thinking about. She reaches for a reference text at the same moment I do. Our hands arrive at the same book simultaneously. We are both very still for a moment. Neither of us moves away. "The petite grammaire de l'Ottoman," she says without looking at me. "Yes," I say, also without looking at her. We are both still touching the spine of the same reference text in a library on a Thursday afternoon in October. "I will release it," I say. "I will release it first," she says. We release it at exactly the same time. It falls between us. Neither of us picks it up. "Miss Ashford," I say. "Your Grace," she says, "the text will keep until tomorrow morning." "Yes," she says. "I expect it will." She goes to her rooms. I remain in the library. The book is still on the floor between the table and the desk, and I leave it there until morning, which is, I am aware, a completely irrational thing to do. I do it anyway. "Eleanor, the dossier. I cannot sleep. This is not unusual. I have never been a reliable sleeper, and the past week has provided ample material for wakefulness. But tonight the specific quality of my wakefulness is different. It is not anxiety, exactly. It is not the hidden text. It is the book that we both reached for at the same moment, and then neither of us picked up. I get up. I put on a wrapper. I go to the kitchen for water, and then, because the study at the end of the hall has better light, I wander in that direction with the half-formed intention of reviewing my notes. The study door is open. The lamp is low. On the desk, a leather portfolio. I have been in this study for 4 days. I have a reasonable sense of what belongs here and what does not, and this portfolio belongs to a slightly different category. Not the day-to-day correspondence, not the intelligence files I have already been shown, something older and more regularly handled, from the worn quality of the cover. I look at it for a moment. I should not look at it. I look at it. Inside, a file with my name on the cover. Not Ashford, my name, Miss Eleanor Ashford, in Grimshaw's careful hand. A date 6 months prior. The first page is surveillance notes. Auction attendance, client contacts, financial summary. Written in Grimshaw's hand, professionally impersonal, the standard language of intelligence documentation. The second page has a different quality. There is a note in the margin, not Grimshaw's hand. The Duke's, that same angular script I have been reading in Thucydides for a week. Monitor professional movements and client contacts. Standard, professional. I turn the page. The third page is dated 6 weeks ago. The Carolingian auction. The first time I looked at him directly, and he looked back. The surveillance notes on this page are shorter, the formal distance of the early pages slightly interrupted. In the margin, another note in his hand. I read it. He has crossed it out. He has rewritten it. The crossing out and rewriting happened 3 times, the 4th version landing finally on 2 words that are entirely unlike any standard intelligence notation I have ever seen. I am not going to transcribe those 2 words here. They belong to him and to a leather portfolio and to a Thursday night in October, and I need a moment to decide what to do with them. I turn the remaining pages, entry after entry, over 6 weeks, gradually and unmistakably changing in character. The clinical distance of the early pages dissolves so slowly that the reader, I, on a sleepless night in a borrowed wrapper, can almost see the exact point at which the discipline failed, the point at which watching a woman bid at auction became something he did not know how to file correctly, and he kept filing it anyway, and kept making notes, and kept crossing them out. It is, I think, one of the most honest documents I have ever read. I replace it exactly, page by page, margin by margin, exactly as I found it. I go back to my room. I sit on the edge of the bed in the dark. He watched me before he knew me. He had a file with my name on it. He acquired my father's debt before I ever spoke to him. He sat in the front row at Sotheby's and kept bidding me up, and then, when I came to his house and told him conditions, he agreed to all 3 of them and went away and wrote 2 crossed-out pages in the margin of an intelligence file. I am still angry about the surveillance. I am also devastatingly, and without wishing to be, moved. I decide to say nothing. I decide to watch what he does next. Because a man who writes the truth 3 times and crosses it out 3 times is a man who has not yet decided whether the truth is a step to say out loud. And there is more information in what he does next than in anything I could force him to admit tonight. Later, I cannot say how much later. I hear footsteps in the corridor. They are unhurried. They stop outside my door. A long silence. Then they walk away. I lie down on the bed in the dark. I think about honesty and what it costs. I think about documents and what they actually record, which is not always what they set out to record. Then I think about the hidden text, and the case, and Vane, and £4 million, and Pool in the Thames. I go to sleep with all of it. Chapter 10, Sebastian, the Proposal. The intelligence report arrives at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning. Vane has moved up his timeline. Lady Castleton's rout is in 3 days. It is the social event of the autumn season. Every peer of consequence in London will be present, which makes it the perfect stage for a formal public move. Vane intends to make a direct public offer for Eleanor Ashford's hand at the rout. Not a private approach, a public one, attended by witnesses, conducted in the full view of the ton. The social mechanics of this are precise and brutal. If she refuses publicly, she is the woman who spurned a Marcus without cause. Her reputation, already fragile by virtue of being a working woman of limited means, will not survive the social interpretation. She will never work under her own name. She will never work under any name. If she accepts, he controls her. There is no version of this scenario in which she wins, and Vane knows this. He designed it so. I call for Grimshaw. I begin drafting 3 different responses and discard all 3. The legal option, having Vane charged before the rout, requires evidence I do not, yet have in admissible form. The hidden text is the key piece, and Eleanor has not yet completed the reconstruction. The diplomatic option, warning Vane away through back channels, will only cause him to accelerate, not retreat, which leaves the social option. If Eleanor Ashford appears at Lady Castleton's rout on the arm of someone whose social position is unassailable, someone whose presence makes a competing public offer from Vane not just awkward, but impossible, without making Vane look ridiculous, the trap does not spring. I go to the door of her sitting room. I knock. She opens it. She is in her working clothes, ink on her right hand, hair pinned with the slightly impermanent quality it always has when she has done it quickly, and intends to take it down again in an hour. She looks at me with those dark eyes that have spent 6 weeks reading manuscript marginalia and 1 sleepless night reading something else. I tell her about the rout, about Vane's plan, about what public refusal will cost her and what acceptance will take from her. I tell her, standing in the doorway of her sitting room in my shirt sleeves at what is, I notice, past midnight, I had not registered the time, that the arrangement I am proposing is protective, strategic, and entirely subject to her terms and her timeline. I tell her she may end it the moment the threat is neutralized. I tell her I will not use it as leverage, because she deserves to hear that explicitly. Then I tell her everything except the part of the dossier that she may or may not have read, because I am not yet ready to be that honest, and I am aware of the irony of this given that I am in the middle of proposing a public engagement. You are asking me to trust you, she says, with my entire future, on the grounds that you have been spying on me for 6 months and found it tolerable. I found it, I say, considerably more than tolerable. The room is very quiet. I will consider it, she says. I go back to my study. I put my head in my hands for the first time in approximately 10 years. She has already decided. I am quite certain she has already decided, but she will make me wait because making me wait is correct. Chapter 11. Eleanor, Lady Castleton's Route. The emerald gown was not my idea. I came to his study on the evening before the rout to ask about the arrangements, and found, on the chair beside the door, a dress that had been placed there by someone who knew the color, would suit, and did not want to draw attention to the gesture by presenting it directly. The color is the color of my best childhood memory. A silk my mother wore to the one Christmas assembly I can remember before she died, dark green with gold thread at the hem. A dress that meant occasion and celebration, and the particular joy of being 7 years old and believing the world was generous. I do not ask him about it, I wear it. He is waiting in the entrance hall when I come down, and he looks at the gown, and then very deliberately at the wall to the left of my shoulder, which is the closest I have seen him. Come to flustered. Your late mother's, I say. Yes. Thank you. He offers his arm. Lady Castleton's house in Piccadilly receives us with the well-oiled welcome of a hostess who has spent 40 years perfecting the management of large numbers of important people in small rooms. The receiving line takes 11 minutes. I count, because it is easier than thinking about the weight of his arm beneath my hand, or the specific quality of the way the room is looking at us. They are looking, I should say, quite a lot. A duke of this consequence does not attend the season's premiere rout with an unknown woman on his arm without considerable social repercussion. I can feel the repercussion working its way through the room in real time. A ripple effect, starting at the door and radiating outward through 100 conversations that have paused for recalibration. Vane is across the room. I see him the moment I finish the receiving line. He is not hard to see. He is the kind of man who positions himself to be seen at the center of a small group, wearing a coat that is excellent and an expression that is equally composed. He looks at us, at me on the Duke's arm, and his expression does not change. That is what frightens me, not fury, not frustration. A rapid, cold reassessment. The expression of a man who has just encountered an unexpected variable and is already calculating the adjustment. I have been reading intelligence files for a week. I recognize this look. He is recalibrating, I murmur to Sebastian. I see it, he says very quietly. He is not retreating, no. What will he do? I do not know yet. Watch his next 3 movements. I watch. 3 conversations, carefully chosen. A solicitor, a government minister, and a woman I do not initially recognize, but who turns from the exchange and looks at me with an expression that confirms she has been given an assignment. Lady Miriam Holt, I say, Vane's social emissary. You know her? I know of her. She is the person he uses to deliver messages he cannot deliver himself without lowering his consequence. She arrives at my side 3 minutes later, gliding through the room with the elegant purpose of someone who has done this many times. Miss Ashford, she says warmly, what a lovely surprise to see you here. You must tell me, is the Duke's interest in manuscripts purely academic, or does he have some additional reason for seeking expert guidance? She smiles, so fortunate that a lady of your particular, slight pause, accomplishments was available to provide it. A perfectly landed threat. The accomplishments in question are both my professional work, which she is implying is beneath the company, and my current position on the Duke's arm, which she is implying is not above suspicion. I smile with equal warmth. How kind of you to ask. The Duke's interest is entirely serious. I have been assisting him in identifying forgeries in an important collection. It is precise and demanding work. I pause. The interesting thing about forgeries, Lady Miriam, is that they rely on the audience not looking carefully enough. Most people are rather obligingly distracted at exactly the right moments. Another pause. The Flemish miniature above the fireplace in this room, for instance, is a reproduction, a very good one, worth about £30. The frame it is in is worth considerably more. I nod pleasantly. Do enjoy the rest of the evening. She moves away. He is silent for precisely 30 seconds. Then, quietly, "You just told her that we can see exactly what she is doing and are unimpressed by it." I told her that, and I also gave her a professional observation about the room's decor, so that she has something to think about besides us. The Flemish miniature is a reproduction, yes. I identified it when we came through the entrance hall. He looks at me. The look is different from the professional attention I have become accustomed to. It is less managed. We dance twice. I am aware that dancing twice is a declaration. He is aware that I am aware. We dance anyway. His hand at my waist is the steadiest thing I have felt in quite some time. The carriage home is quiet in a way that contains a great deal. Chapter 12. Sebastian, what the file never said. I review this with the same methodical honesty I would apply to any operational problem. I have been in active intelligence work for 10 years. I have managed assets, handled informants, maintained the kind of professional detachment that keeps operations clean and people alive. I understand that attachment is a liability. I have understood this for a long time, and have been sufficiently disciplined to maintain the understanding. The conclusion I reach, by 6 different routes, is the same. I am in love with Eleanor Ashford. This is tactically inconvenient, professionally irresponsible, personally unprecedented, also non-negotiable. I arrive at the last point by the 6th route and sit with it. I go to tell her. I go as far as the corridor outside her room, which I have done 3 times in the past week without consequence, and intend to do once more tonight, with more consequence. I raise my hand to knock. I think about the file. She does not know I began watching her before I knew her. She does not know that the debt acquisition was not predatory, that I bought it specifically to keep Vane away from it, that I had already decided 2 months before we spoke that she deserved to be free of it, regardless of the case. She does not know that the arrangement with the scholarly community, the letter I mentioned and have not yet produced, was begun before I had any personal reason to begin it. She knows I observed her. She does not know the full shape of the observation, which is, I will be honest, not purely professional from the very beginning. I cannot tell her I love her before I tell her the whole truth, and I cannot tell her the whole truth before the case is resolved, because the whole truth, deployed in the wrong moment, might cause her to leave the protection of this house. I lower my hand. I go back to my study. Grimshaw arrives. "Your Grace," he says, "Vane has found the hidden manuscript." I look up. His man was at the second antiquary in Covent Garden this morning, the one where the collection's provenance was originally catalogued. The catalogue description contains enough specific detail about the binding and the marginalia for someone who knows what to look for to identify the manuscript precisely. He pauses. He is moving tonight. I stand up. Chapter 13. Eleanor Vane's move. The library is the best room in the house at night. I have been working here until late every evening for a week, and the library at midnight has a particular quality. The fire low, the room concentrated around the pool of candlelight, the manuscripts arranged in my system, the smell of old paper and beeswax, a kind of constant that steadies me when other things are unsteady. Tonight I am working on the Ottoman text. I have been reconstructing the hidden layer section by section, working backward from the identifying mark through the body of the text. The language is a form of court. Ottoman I know from a commission I completed 3 years ago. a firm authentication for a private collector, with some modifications that suggest a scribe trained in Istanbul in the early part of the century. The syntax is formal, institutional, with the cadence of a legal document. Which is, I think, exactly what it is. At 11:43, the lights go out. Not all of them. The fire remains. But the two candles on the desk and the lamp on the secondary table are simultaneously extinguished, which is not how candles behave in a draught. I stop moving. I sit very still in the firelight. I hear a door. Not the main door. A door that I have never heard open before. A different sound from the direction of the servants' passage that runs along the east wall. I have been in this house long enough to know its sounds. This is a sound that does not belong. My hands find the edge of the manuscript case on the desk by touch. Solid oak, iron clasped, corner fittings of heavy brass. I have spent a week working with it. I know its weight. The figure detaches from the dark near the east wall and moves toward the desk with the efficiency of a professional. Not hurrying, not hesitating, covering ground with the systematic certainty of someone who has done this before. I do not scream. I think he is looking for the manuscript. He is not looking for a woman in a chair at the wrong angle to the desk. I have moved my chair in the past 40 minutes, moved it toward the fire to read a reference text, and I am not where he expects me to be. He is at the desk. I bring the manuscript case down. I bring it down with both hands and all the leverage I have, and it connects with a sound that is very unambiguous about what it is, and he goes sideways, and I run. I run for the bell pull, but he recovers too fast. He is larger and faster, and he grabs my arm, and I go down, and the manuscript case goes skidding across the floor, and he pulls me up, and the door. The library door comes open, and the room fills with light and sound, and the household running, and he releases me to deal with what is coming, which is what I need. I am on my feet in the time it takes him to turn. I have the fireplace poker. He has, I notice, a very poor assessment of what I will do with it. He reassesses rapidly. When Sebastian arrives, he comes in third, behind 2 footmen and Grimshaw, which suggests he was already moving before the sound reached him. He finds me standing over a man who is on the floor, and a library that has been used as a battlefield. The hidden manuscript is gone. I tap my temple. It is all in here, I tell him. He took paper. He cannot take what I have already read. He looks at me. He is not, in this moment, managing his expression. Whatever is on his face is entirely unguarded, and it is a great deal. Let that settle for a moment. A man broke into a duke's library in the dark. He came for a manuscript worth £4 million and the collapse of 3 nations' legal claims. He came prepared. He came professional, and Eleanor Ashford hit him with an oak case, ran for the bell pull, picked up a fireplace poker, and memorized everything before he arrived. If you are not yet subscribed to this channel, I need to ask you, what exactly are you waiting for? Because this story does not slow down from here. What Sebastian is about to tell Eleanor in that library, the full truth, every word of it, will change everything between them. And what Eleanor does with that truth is the moment this whole story has been building toward. Subscribe now so you do not lose us. Hit that like button. It takes 1 second and it tells us that Eleanor's story deserves to keep being told. And leave us a comment. What did you think she was going to do when the lights went out? I want to read every single answer. We have more story to tell. Stay with us. Chapter 14. Sebastian, the confrontation. I stay long enough to be certain. Not certain that the household is secure. Grimshaw has that in hand. The man on the floor is being dealt with. The servant's passage has been examined. I mean certain that she is actually all right. rather than performing all rightness for the benefit of the room, which is what she does when she is frightened, and does not want to be perceived as frightened. I know the difference now. I watch her for 4 minutes. She directs the household with the particular authority of a woman who has decided what needs to happen next and is implementing it without waiting for someone to tell her she may. Her hands are steady. Her voice is steady. She has a cut at her temple, 2 inches, not deep, that she has already pressed a cloth to and largely dismissed. She looks at me once, briefly, the way she does when she is checking me for information rather than asking for it. I go. The man from the library, whose name I have by the time I reach him, established as a former military intelligence operative, currently employed privately, and going by the name James Rook, does not give me Vane directly. He is too professional for that. He gives me enough to confirm what the file already suggested, but could not prove. The forgeries are not simply diplomatic mischief. They are legal instruments in a specific case. 3 estate claims, 2 continents, a land title worth £4 million, Eleanor's authentication, the name Ashford on a certificate of provenance, was to be the unimpeachable legal pillar. No court in England would challenge the word of Ashford, whose reputation for accuracy is the professional standard. She was to authenticate the forgeries as genuine. Then, when the legal case was complete, and Vane had acquired the properties at a discounted price by manufacturing discredited claimants on both sides, she was to be discredited herself. The connection to the forged documents, once the fraud was exposed, would destroy her. She was going to be used and then burned. I returned to find the library empty except for Eleanor, who is not in her rooms where I left her. She is at my desk. She is sitting in my chair at my desk, with sheets of paper in front of her, covered in her precise handwriting, and a candle set at the angle she uses for close work. She is reading what she has written. She looks up when I come in, one fast sweep of her eyes, checking me for damage, a very slight relaxation when she finds none. "I know what he wanted me for," she says. "Yes, and I know what you have not told me." The room is very still. I sit down across from her, and I begin. Chapter 15, Eleanor, the full truth. He tells me everything. He begins at the beginning. Renwick, the Foreign Office, the surveillance, the debt acquisition, and why. He tells me about the forgeries, and what they were for, and about the 3 documents I authenticated, without knowing they were forgeries, and what my name on those certificates meant in the construction of Vane's legal case. He tells me that the process of acquiring professional acknowledgement for my work under my own name was begun 2 months before we spoke, before he knew me, before the Carolingian auction or the library floor, or the book we both reached for at the same moment. He tells me he did it because the file told him I was brilliant, and it was a waste, and that he finished it because he could not think of a reason to stop. I listen to all of it. I am quiet for a moment. Then I say what I need to say, precisely, methodically, without raising my voice, because raising my voice would suggest I have lost control of the argument, and I have not lost control of it. I tell him what the surveillance cost me. The sense of professional privacy, the assumption of being observed without consent, the particular humiliation of knowing that my financial desperation was documented in someone else's file, and assessed with clinical detachment, while I was simply trying to work. I take apart every justification he offers with the same care I bring to manuscript authentication. Not cruelty, precision. He does not argue. He receives it. And when I have finished, there is a silence. The worst of it, I say, because I have decided the worst of it deserves to be said, is not that you watched me. The worst of it is that I read your file and I saw the point at which watching me became something you could not explain in operational terms. And you did not tell me. You stood outside my door on 3 separate nights, and you did not knock. The room goes very still. He looks at me the way I imagine no one has looked at him in quite some time. The way a person looks when they have been seen, completely and accurately, and do not know whether to flee from the exposure or stay in it. He stays. He says 4 words. I could not find. He stops. He starts again. I could not find the right ones, he says, for what I needed to say. I look at him for a long moment. That, I say, is the most honest thing you have told me. He does not say anything else. I look at the pages in front of me, the decoded Ottoman text, the translated sections, the name at the bottom of the hidden confession. We have work to do, I say. He looks at the pages. Yes, this does not mean I am finished being angry. I would not expect otherwise. Good. I push one of the pages toward him. Read this. Tell me what you see. He reads, We work through the night. Chapter 16, Sebastian the Plan. We build it together. This is the chapter of the story where the intelligence background and the authentication expertise meet at full capacity, where what I know about how courts work and how Foreign Office interventions are staged meets what she knows about documents and language and the precise evidentiary weight of a written confession in the hand of the man who was paid to execute it. The plan is elegant because she makes it elegant. The original forger, a man who worked under commission from Vane's intermediaries, and who concealed his own confession in the manuscript he had been paid to modify, apparently for reasons of conscience or insurance, or both, wrote his confession in Ottoman Turkish, in a fading ink, hidden beneath the visible text. Eleanor has reconstructed it from memory, every word, across 3 nights of work. The plan. She will appear before the legal proceeding where Vane intends to present his forged documents. She will authenticate them. In a room full of peers, lawyers, Foreign Office officials, and Vane himself, she will provide her professional assessment. Thorough, detailed, technically credible. She will authenticate them as genuine. She will let Vane's case rest on her name, and then she will produce the decoded confession in her own handwriting from memory and read it aloud in the original Ottoman, and translate it herself, sentence by sentence, into English. The room where this will happen will contain every person required to be present when Vane's operation collapses. The Foreign Office officials Grimshaw has spent 3 days coordinating the government ministers I have called in 10 years of favors to convene the legal representatives of the estate claimants Vane has been manipulating. It is not a comfortable plan. It requires Eleanor to stand in a room full of powerful men and deliver a performance of professional certainty that will be either the cornerstone of the case against Vane or the ruin of everything she has spent 3 years building. If this goes wrong, she says, on the night before the proceeding, she is at the desk. I am by the fire. It will not go wrong, I say. If it does, I cross the room. Chapter 17, Eleanor, the Proceeding. The chamber is exactly what a room designed to settle the affairs of nations looks like, paneled in dark wood, lit by windows too high to see out of, furnished with the heavy solemnity of a space where consequence lives. They sit on 3 sides of a long table. Foreign Office officials, government ministers, legal representatives, 3 gentlemen whose names I recognize from the estate claims. Vane sits at the far end, flanked by his legal advisers, wearing an expression of a calm certainty so complete that it looks constructed. I sit at the near end, alone. Miss Ashford, the senior Foreign Office official, says, "You have examined the documents in question?" "I have, sir. And your assessment of their provenance?" I take a breath. I build the case methodically. Every technical term I know, every element of my professional expertise, deployed in order, precisely enough to be unimpeachable. I watch Vane's certainty become something dipper as the minutes pass. The confidence of a man who has constructed a trap and is watching it close. I can feel it. The moment when his legal team, at the far end of the table, relaxes fractionally. The moment when the government ministers exchange a glance that says, "This appears to be in order." I let it close. Then I say, "I have one additional observation regarding provenance." I produce the pages. During the course of my examination of the collection, I identified a secondary text layer within the primary manuscript. The layer was composed in a fading, iron-based ink, designed to become nearly invisible under ordinary light conditions. I have reconstructed this text from memory and committed it to writing. I set the pages on the table. The text is a signed confession, prepared by the forger engaged to modify the document, naming the commissioner of the forgery and describing the full scope of the commission. The room is absolutely silent. The text is in court Ottoman Turkish. With the committee's permission, I will read it in the original and provide a simultaneous translation. Miss Ashford, Vane's lead counsel, begins. The witness is speaking, the Foreign Office official says flatly. He has been reading the first page of the reconstruction. His face has a particular quality. Continue, Miss Ashford. I read. My voice does not shake. It does not shake through 6 pages of Ottoman court legal language or through the translation. Sentence by sentence, named parties, dates, sums, instructions, or through the final section, where the forger, with the particular conscience of a man who knew what he had done and made one document that told the truth, had signed his name and specified the channel through which his payment had been delivered, a channel traceable directly to Vane's private accounts. The room is silent for a full count of 10 after I finish. Then Vane stands. I have watched him for back weeks, with the analytical attention I bring to every document, and I see what I have suspected, that behind the constructed composure is a real person who has been working for a very long time to ensure that real person never shows in public. What I see now, in the fraction of a second before he reassembles himself, is something precise and cold and genuinely frightening. And then the Foreign Office official moves, and the sound that follows is the sound of 20 years of constructed certainty coming apart at the seams. I walk out of the chamber. I walk into the corridor. I lean against the wall and allow myself 30 seconds. My hands shake. I let them. 30 seconds. Then I straighten. He is there. Sebastian Vale, Duke of Ashmoor, who did not enter the chamber because his presence would have been a procedural complication, who has been in this corridor for 2 hours. He looks at me with the unguarded expression I have seen precisely 3 times. This is the 4th. I understand without words what the waiting cost him. I understand that a man who has spent 10 years in intelligence work and 4 years in the Foreign Office and his entire adult life maintaining professional detachment, spent 2 hours in a corridor because he could not make himself wait further away. It is done, I say. I know, he says. Vane? Being detained. A pause. Your Grace. Miss Ashford, I am very tired. I am also, somewhere beneath the tiredness, a kind of happiness I have not felt in quite some time. Take me home, I say. He offers his arm. Chapter 18. Sebastian, what the fortress kept in. The aftermath has the quality of the morning after a long storm. Everything still, bright, the air tasting of resolution. Vane is taken. Grimshaw has a new assignment, a quieter one. Renwick sends a brief, satisfied note from the Foreign Office that contains no sentiment and a great deal of implication. Sir Edmund Ashford does something surprising when I tell him, in precise and unsparing terms, exactly how his financial situation was used by Vane's intermediaries, and what the consequence could have been for his daughter. He does not bluster. He does not reach for charm or self-justification. He sits in the chair in my study and looks at his hands, and is, quite simply, ashamed. It is the first responsible silence of his adult life. He signs the remainder of the Ashford estate into Eleanor's name, directly. Not what remains of its value, that is minimal, but the name, the formal designation, the legal standing that goes with it. He does this without being asked. He does it in the morning, delivers the signed documents to Ashmoor House, and leaves for the country without seeing his daughter. It is the most loving thing I have seen him do. I discharge the debt entirely, permanently, no conditions. I have drawn up the papers, and I am holding them in my hand when I go to Eleanor's room to tell her. I find her room empty, not vacated. I note this with a particular relief, but she is not in it. Her books are here, her tools are here. The authentication notes, from 3 weeks of work, are stacked with their characteristic precision on the desk. I find her in the east hallway, directing a footman who is carrying a crate of reference texts. The east guest room, she is saying, will need a second lamp by the window. The morning light from the east is correct for manuscript examination, but requires supplementary light from the north in the afternoon. There is a lamp in the south sitting room that is not being used. Yes, miss, and the third shelf in the library, the section I designated for cross-reference materials. I will need a second bracket installed at the end. Can you tell me who to speak to about that? I can arrange it, miss. Excellent, thank you. She sees me. She does not apologize for being in the middle of organizing my household. She looks at the papers in my hand. Is that what I think it is? Your father's debt, I say. Discharged. No conditions. I hold them out. She takes them. She reads them, which takes 4 minutes, because she reads every document completely before acknowledging its contents. Then she folds them and looks at me. He signed the estate into my name, she says. Yes, that was. Yes, a pause. The east guest room, she says, has adequate light for manuscript work, if the second lamp is placed correctly. I have been examining the space. I see. The work I have remaining, the commission for Dr. Hobbs, and 2 new commissions that arrived last week from clients who heard about the proceeding, will require a permanent studio. Not an occasional arrangement. A permanent one. She looks at me with those precise dark eyes. I am not asking permission, she says. I am informing you. You are always welcome in this house. I am not asking about being welcome. I am telling you that I am staying. The footman has gone around the corner with his crate. The hallway is empty except for the 2 of us. Eleanor, I say. Sebastian, she says. I need to tell you, I know, she says. I read the file. Silence. Which file? She looks at the wall, then back at me, and the corner of her mouth does something I have never seen it do before. The one on the desk, she says. 3 weeks ago. I could not sleep. You read the entire, every page, including the margin notes. She pauses. All 4 versions of them. Miss Ashford. You may call me Eleanor, she says. I think at this point you may. Chapter 19, Eleanor the Promise. He gives me a letter. Not immediately. It takes him 3 days after the proceeding. 3 days of the particular dance of 2 people who have said everything they need to say professionally and have not yet found the language for what comes next. 3 days of shared meals and library evenings, and once, in the kitchen at an inadvisable hour, a conversation about Thucydides that ends with both of us leaning against the same counter laughing at something that was not, objectively speaking, that amusing. The letter arrives on the 4th morning, placed on the desk in my studio while I am working, no ceremony. It is addressed to the antiquarian community of London, under the signatures of 4 of the most respected scholars in England, men whose names in this field are the equivalent of a legal instrument. And it acknowledges Miss Eleanor Ashford as a manuscript authenticator of the first rank, practicing independently under her own name, not Ashford of her father. Eleanor Ashford, in her own right. I read it again. My hands are shaking slightly, which I permit because no one is watching, or I think no one is watching until I hear him in the doorway. I began that process 2 months ago, he says, before I knew you. The file said you were exceptional and the field was wasting the resource, and you finished it because I could not think of a reason to stop. A pause. That is the honest version. I look at the letter. This is the most useful thing anyone has ever given me, I say. I know. I am still angry about the surveillance. I know that, too. I intend to be angry about it periodically for some time. I consider that reasonable. He is standing in the doorway of the studio. My studio, in his house, in the morning light that comes correctly from the east window. He is wearing the expression that is not managed, that he only has when he does not think he needs to manage it. I look at him for a moment, then I step toward him. And here is what I have learned, in 4 weeks, about a man who spent 10 years mastering the art of revealing nothing. He reveals everything when he finally decides to. He moves to meet me halfway, and his hands find my face, and he says, "Eleanor, just that, just my name," in a voice that has nothing controlled about it at all. And I say, "I see you," which is the truest thing I have. He kisses me slowly, the way something long-awaited finally arrives, not in a rush, not with urgency, with the particular quality of something that has been made to wait long enough that when it comes completely. I have read every book in my father's library twice. I have authenticated 214 manuscripts. I have translated 3 texts from Latin and 1 from Arabic, and kept a household solvent for 3 years, on wit and determination, and the stubborn refusal to be less than I am. I have never felt as precisely accurately known as I do in this moment, in a studio with east-facing light, in a house I have reorganized, with the man who wrote crossed-out margin notes for 6 weeks, and stood outside my door on 3 separate nights before he found the right words. Chapter 20. Sebastian home. The town is in uproar. This is not unexpected. A duke marrying a baronet's daughter who works professionally. Who is, in fact, known to work, whose name is now attached to 4 new professional commissions and a letter from the antiquarian community. Is the scandal of the season. The season is also, it must be said, slightly bereft of other material, which makes us the subject of more concentrated attention than would otherwise be the case. My solicitor issues a statement of 6 words that contains the phrase, "The Duke declines further comment." Eleanor reads it and laughs. I have heard her laugh before. At the Thucydides in the kitchen, at the second worst draft of my letter to her, at the book that fell on the library floor. But I have not yet heard this. The unguarded version, the one that has nothing protective in it, that is simply the sound of a woman, finding something genuinely, completely amusing. It is, I find, the best sound in the world. 6 words, she says. You could have had at least 9. 6 was sufficient. It also contains a dangling modifier. I beg your pardon? The Duke declines further comment, leaves unclear what the Duke declines further comment about. Grammatically, it suggests you are refusing to comment about something unspecified, rather than about your own engagement. I know what it is about. Grammatically, it could be about anything. A scandal at the club, an agricultural disagreement, a mild upset with your tailor, Eleanor. I am merely noting a structural weakness. She goes back to her work. I go back to mine. This is the shape of the house now. The library in her system, which turns out to be better than mine in every respect. Manuscripts spread across the surfaces she has designated for active work, organized by commission and status, each pile topped by a note in her handwriting that I can read, because I have spent 4 weeks learning to read. Her handwriting, which is more difficult than ancient Greek, and infinitely more worth learning. The herb garden on the south terrace, basil and thyme, and something she identified as the correct period variety for a culinary reference she is working on, maintained with the same precision she brings to authentication. I water it when she is occupied. She has not mentioned this. I believe she knows. Grimshaw, who has seen me through a decade of intelligence work and 2 conflicts and approximately 14 crises, appears one afternoon while Eleanor is explaining to a junior footman why the second shelf bracket needs to be 2 inches further left. "You look different, Your Grace," he says. "How so?" He considers this with the seriousness he brings to all assessments. "Present," he says. "You look present." I watch Eleanor finish her explanation. The footman nods, remeasures, adjusts. "Yes," I say. She comes into the room. She looks at the shelf. She looks at the footman. "That is correct," she says. "Thank you." He goes. She turns. She sees me in the doorway. She does not ask what I am doing there, because she knows what I am doing there. I am doing what I apparently do now, which is stand in doorways watching her think. Because watching her think is the thing I am least able to stop doing. She turns back to the shelf. She moves a manuscript. She moves it 1 inch to the left, she considers. Then she pushes one of the candles forward, slightly, so that the light falls across a wider angle of the shelf. A small adjustment. A better one. At 11 o'clock, I come to the library. She is at the desk, working by candlelight, head bent over a reference text, humming something very quietly that I cannot identify, and that she would deny humming if I asked. She is wearing the blue dressing gown from the East guest room that has, gradually and without formal discussion, become simply the dressing gown she wears in the evenings when the work is the kind that does not require being properly dressed. I sit in the chair across from her. I open the Thucydides, which is back on the correct shelf, with both our annotations in it now, mine in the margins, hers in pencil alongside, a 2-voice conversation conducted in the margins of a text about war and strategy and what it costs to survive them. She does not look up. She is deep in the work, in the place she goes when the language takes her completely, and the room has the quality of a space inhabited by 2 people who are each entirely absorbed and entirely aware of the other. After a moment, she reaches forward and moves the candle slightly, adjusts it so that the circle of light falls across a wider angle of the desk, wider than she needs for her own work, wide enough for mine. She does not look up, she does not say anything. She simply includes me in the light, the way she has included me in everything. Without announcement, without ceremony, as though this is simply the obvious thing, the correct arrangement, the way the room ought to be. I sit with Thucydides in my lap and the candlelight on the page, and Eleanor Ashford 3 feet away, humming under her breath, working in the language of a civilization 300 years dead, keeping our house alive. She walked into my life and identified a forgery in 3.5 minutes. She read a hidden text by candlelight and memorized it completely. She stood in a room full of powerful men and delivered a confession that brought down a conspiracy, and she walked out and allowed herself 30 seconds to shake, and then she straightened. She authenticated everything real in it. I am never letting her leave. what Eleanor and Sebastian's story teaches us, if we are willing to be taught by it. On the hiding of genius, Eleanor Ashford spent 3 years doing brilliant work, under another person's name because the world told her she was not allowed to do it under her own. This was not unusual in 1814. It is not entirely unusual now. The lesson is not that the world must change before we act. It is that we must act anyway, with full capability, and insist on being seen for it. Eleanor never did diminished work, because she was given diminished credit. She translated 3 texts from Latin, learned Arabic, and kept a family solvent, and she did all of it with the same precision she brought to everything. Genius does not wait for permission to be genius. On surveillance and trust, Sebastian watched Eleanor before he knew her, and this was a professional wrong, even if it came from a defensive instinct. What redeems him is not that he watched, but that he changed, and that the change is documented in his own handwriting, crossed out and rewritten in the margins of a file he never expected anyone to read. Trust is not built by the absence of mistakes. It is built by the honesty of what we do after them. On asking for help, Eleanor spent 3 years refusing to be helped, because every offer of help came attached to a cost she could not afford. Sebastian spent 10 years refusing to need anyone, because needing someone is a vulnerability in a world of threats. They both held out until they could not, and what they found on the other side of holding out was not weakness, it was home. On forgery and authenticity, the story is, beneath everything, about the difference between what appears genuine and what is genuinely real. The manuscripts that looked right but were not, the professional facades that hid who Eleanor actually was, the controlled exterior that hid who Sebastian actually was. The only things in the story that were entirely real from the beginning are the ones that the forgery was built to undermine. The authentic text, the honest margin notes, the names of people willing, in the end, to be legible to each other. And that, dear listener, is where we leave them. Eleanor Ashford, in the light of a studio with east-facing windows, doing brilliant work under her own name. Sebastian Vale, in the chair across from her, with Thucydides in his lap, and the best cup of tea he has ever had beside him, made in the wrong pot. Both of them present. Both of them known. If this story has meant something to you, if Eleanor's refusal to be less than she was has stirred something, or if Sebastian's margin notes have said something to you about the distance between what we show the world and what we actually feel, then I need to ask you directly, please subscribe to this channel. Smash that like button. Leave us a comment telling us where you are watching from, not because we are asking you to perform an action, but because every comment, every subscriber, every person who tells us, I am here, I am watching, this story reached me, that is what keeps these stories alive. You are the reason Eleanor gets to speak. You are the reason Sebastian gets to find the right words. We put our whole hearts into every production. Your support is what makes the next one possible. Subscribe to see how the next story unfolds. Drop a comment and tell us where you are. I will love to say hello to you, just to know how far our story is going. There is a particular kind of love story that does not begin in a ballroom. It begins in the back of an auction room, between a woman who cannot afford to lose and a man who does not know how to admit what he is losing sleep over. It begins in the margins of an intelligence file, crossed out, rewritten, crossed out again. It begins in a library, on the floor, with manuscripts spread around 2 people who have spent their entire adult lives being useful and never being known. Eleanor Ashford spent 3 years hiding her name. Sebastian Vale spent 10 years hiding himself. They did not rescue each other from the world. They saw each other clearly in it and chose to remain visible to each other and to themselves. This is not a small thing. In a world that rewards the convincing performance of what we are supposed to be, choosing to be legible, choosing to be known, is a form of courage that does not announce itself. It is the courage of a woman who says, "I found it considerably more than tolerable," and knows she has been heard. It is the courage of a man who stands outside a door 3 nights in a row and finally knocks. Thank you for listening to She Bid Against Him at every auction. Now the Duke has bought her father's debt. From our story to your ears, to whatever corner of the world you are watching from tonight, you have been the best kind of audience, the kind that feels everything and remembers it. Until the next story, until the next room, the next manuscript, the next door that finally opens. If Eleanor and Sebastian's story has stayed with you, our The Duke's Forbidden Hour collection has more stories just like this one waiting for you. Right now, every one of them built the same way, with the same care. The link is in the description. Come find your next story. Good night.